Hello, Fortune Seekers, and welcome to the official Mega Moth Studio Podcast. In today's episode, we are going to be covering drama, how to add it to your game, with us discussing the final quest mechanic, and then we're going to cover the 405 brewing event that we just had this past weekend. So settle in and get ready for some stories. Hello, Fortune Seekers, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Joel Watts. As always, I'm here joined by my, my creative partner, my friend, and my co-host, Daniel Ayub. How are you doing, Danny?
I really appreciate that introduction. That's very nice of you.
Yeah, I just have to say it all out. I mean, it's true. You are like three different things to me right now, if not more, at this point.
That's amazing. I really appreciate that. I would concur. I would say that you are many things to me, and I appreciate all of them.
Yeah, that's what friends do when they reach this age. It's like if they got nothing else going on, they start a podcast. But in our situation, we created a game and then started a podcast. So, it really bonds the friendship, long term.
Yeah, I don't think we'd be doing this if it wasn't for the game. I don't know if we feel like we have enough to talk about outside the game.
At least not yet, but now that we have the equipment and we got the schedule down, I mean, I'm not going to be surprised if we start, doing an episode by episode recap of One Piece or something like that here in the next, few months.
I need an excuse to feel like it's not a problem for me to be sitting watching hours of One Piece.
If we started now and we did one episode a week, we'd have to do more than one episode a week, I'm sure. If we started now, though, and just it covered even 2 to 3 episodes a week, we'd be at this for what? Probably another decade.
I don't know, but it seems like it's definitely a commitment.
Yeah, but I was actually looking at, I think I told you about this the other day. I was looking at the One Piece card game, and I was like, really kind of digging it, and it was just the tutorial for the kids to with the basic decks, and I was like, there's a lot going here, especially the card backs, the art, the mechanics. I mean, hey, if we have a competitor out there, I have a feeling we're going to be competing against the One Piece game, so we got to know our enemy.
Oh, really? Well, I love One Piece. I definitely will check out the game. If it looks even reasonably playable, I would definitely give it a go.
Yeah, I would say, I'm saying this as somebody who hasn't played a lot of the Pokemon TCG, but to me, it struck me as a better version of the Pokemon TCG. So to recap last episode, just really fast, we covered our approach. So we covered our approach to teaching the game, as well as our approach to fixing the game when the people we taught broke the game. And that all came, I think, pretty handy. It was on the top of our minds because we just did the 405 brewing event that we've been building up over the past few episodes, where we taught a lot of people back to back. And we're going to get into that later in the episode. But before we do that, we're going to talk about drama in the game, creating drama and creating stories utilizing mechanics. And I think we have a really nifty mechanic to go over that we introduced pretty early into the game called the final quest. And we're going to cover that. But before we do, I do have the question of the week here for you.
Oh, boy. Okay, let's see.
So I think for some reason we were watching. So during the Norman event, to set the stage, we were all staying in the same loft. Me, you, and your brother Lucas, who came out to help us with the event, as well as some of our in-town friends who would stay with us. At the very least, very deep into the night.
Are you referring to the producer of this podcast, William?
Yeah, I am. Well, I think William straight up stayed with. I mean, he might as well have been the fourth roommate, the fourth Beatle, if you will.
Fourth shirt brother.
Yeah, the fourth shirt brother, and yes, we were all shirt brothers. I think we went to multiple days wearing the Mega Moth T-shirts. Hence why we're not wearing them on the podcast today. We're kind of sick of them after wearing them 3 days straight while we were in Norman. But we would show up at the diners and the local game stores all wearing the same shirt. We definitely got attention and eyes drawn to us walking in with this very stark, high contrast black shirt with white logo on it.
Absolutely.
So we were all
I think
shirt brothers.
If people have not had the experience of walking with a large group of people wearing matching T-shirts, you don't want it to be too large, then it looks like you're on some sort of charity walk or something. You want it to seem like you're part of a small group that's on a mission. So if you can
I was going to say just enough people to make a band. Like we're talking between like 3 and 7. That's when that's like the sweet spot number of like, okay, what's going on with those guys?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But you should definitely do it. I mean, it's interesting. People will actually talk to you in a way that people typically don't talk to you. And you meet people and have interesting conversations. So it's quite the conversation starter. I mean, we were stopped multiple times. Mm-hmm. And oddly, I guess Norman's not that big of a town because someone recognized us from one night to the next. And we're like, hey, are you guys those moth guys that were at Indiana Jones?
Oh man, that is something else we should cover in this episode. The our experience watching Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I'm sure we'll get to it just haphazardly, but I was going to ask you a question of the week because we spent some time watching the wonderful sketch comedy show I Think You Should Leave, which I know you're a huge fan of. I appreciate it when I see it, but I don't go out of my way to watch it. But it did get me thinking of the sketch comedy I grew up with. Like most Americans, like the first sketch comedy show I ever watched was Saturday Night Live, which I feel like almost every, red-blooded American has some relationship to Saturday Night Live. So I just thought I'd ask, just as an icebreaker for us to get to know our audience better, to reveal ourselves to our audience, what is your favorite era of Saturday Night Live, if you have one? And if you don't, why not?
So I would say that I did at one point in my life watch a lot of Saturday Night Live. It was not live or on Saturday.
No.
It was on Comedy Central reruns.
Yes.
And I would say that my era was definitely sort of Phil Hartman, Mike Myers, Chris Farley, Adam Sandler, Tim Meadows. That era was very, very... one of my absolute favorites, Sherry O'Terry.
Oh, yeah.
Anna Gasteyer, Molly Shannon. For me, like that's I can't speak to objectively how funny it was compared to what's on TV now. I just know that, at the stage of life I was at, I thought it was hilarious. But if I'm being completely honest, I was always more of a Kids in the Hall person.
I think if I were to sit down and just like watch a sketch comedy show, Kids in the Hall would definitely be like what I would put on streaming.
It's coming back, I think.
No, I think it already came back. Like,
it did?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there was a big push for it recently, and we would owe it to ourselves to watch the most recent episodes. But no, that's a great era of Saturday Night Live, and I think I had the same experience as you growing up watching that era on Comedy Central, in reruns, and I would put it very, very high on my list. In fact, I might have chosen that if you hadn't chosen it, but I feel like to develop, like maybe even to, be contrarian or just to add more to the conversation, I would say, I'm not going to say like the era right this instant, but like over the past few years, I think it actually has, and maybe because of YouTube, I've been more like catching the best, the best sketches of each episode. They'll just be on the YouTube front page and I'll watch those really quick. And I think that, it seems like they're doing a great job. I think I have this way of, how should I say? I think I was about to express this to you about Saturday Night Live while we were in Norman at the Loft. And you were like, oh, it sounds like you're about to say something you should say for the podcast. So I'm just going to say it now. Okay. So with Saturday Night Live, there was recently an era that people considered an all-time great, which was, it was like Will Forte and what's his name from Barry?
Yeah, Bill Hader.
Bill Hader,
Andy Samberg.
Andy Samberg, huge, especially for the digital shorts. I mean, that's like kind of is like now like the new golden era, I think, especially for, like kids who are 5-10 years younger than me who grew up with that as their Saturday Night Live. And I totally understand. But one thing I do feel like about the most recent cast who are there right now, at least last time I checked in on them, is most of the time as Saturday Night Live is like seen as it's either a destination or a stepping stone. And I feel like the Bill Haders, Will Fortes, Andy Sambergs, you definitely got that sense that it was like they were very talented people who knew Saturday Night Live was going to be their debut onto the public stage and that they were going to be able to use it to go on to bigger things. but I do think that the most recent era, and I'm sure that the cast could disagree with me, on a personal level, but you get the sensation that the people who were there, in the past 5 years and who made up that cast, this was more like this was where they wanted to be. This was like, it's almost like they wanted to park. I feel like you're seeing a lot more cast members stick around a lot longer because it's like, no, this is it for them. And I think that there's something really special about that. If it goes on too long, it could probably be a little sad, but there's definitely I feel like there's like almost a cast right now that is so in love with the institution of Saturday Night Live that it, kind of, you feel it in the energy and the sketches. Everybody's just so happy to be there.
I agree with that. I don't know if I like it. I mean, I've always appreciated the churn of Saturday Night Live because it always did feel like it was the proving ground for new comedians coming on the stage. And I don't know, like we see this in a lot of spots right now in society where it feels like you've got these incumbents that just kind of sit here and take up a seat and are not letting people grow because they've decided to stop growing. And I think there are a couple cast members that linger. I love Kenan Thompson, SNL, all that growing up, Good Burger. I will never say anything bad about Kenan Thompson, but I do wish that his show was more successful or he had another outlet because, he's been doing the sketch comedy for a long time. He does a great job, but, I would love to see him move on and do something other than SNL because, he's been there for almost a decade now, right?
Yeah, I know.
How long has he been there?
Since we worked at Central Market together, at least. Because I remember being surprised, like learning, because at the time, a lot of people go through this. They, watch a lot of Saturday Night Live when they're like teenagers because there's nothing else to do on Saturday nights. And then you become an adult and you have a car, you can go places, and so you stop watching the show. And then you like hear things about the show like through NPR or whatever. And I remember hearing that Kenan was on the show and I was like, what? And I remember that being around the time I was at Central Market or maybe slightly before. So
what about Kel? I mean, are you a Kel person?
I was always more of a Kenan person. Yeah,
Kel. I was always more of a Kel person.
Okay. I don't know what he's up to. But
Do you remember that movie Mystery Men?
Yes, I do. And he definitely stole the show a little. That's like
He's got to have a comeback at some point, right?
Yeah. And also Mystery Men is due like a retro, like we all forgot how good Mystery Men is. One thing that I think you could just lead off the conversation with, yes, the song All Star by Smash Mouth is known because it was used in Shrek, but really it was really Mystery Men that put that song on the map. The music video is for Mystery Men.
I had no idea.
I taught you something. I mean, I pretty much went and saw that movie because I loved that song so much. It was probably the first song that I really dug, which was it's kind of a slightly embarrassing thing to say at this, in this day and age. Well, it was embarrassing to say until. Sorry, what was that?
Chumbawamba with Tub Thumper wasn't on your radar.
I mean, I knew of the song, but it wasn't like it resonated with me. I mean,
I had such weird taste as a fourth grader or however old I was when that came out.
Mm-hmm. No, that was. But yeah, Kel and Mystery Men. Like I'm surprised, like for how beloved our generation holds the Good Burger sketches. I'm surprised I don't know where Kel is right now. But I would also say for Kenan Thompson, I think like he, because now we're an SNL podcast, but it seems to me like he has proven himself through and through that he could be a great game show host. So I'm assuming he's just waiting for either one of the institutional people to fall off so he can take their spot, or for the next great American game show to come around that could last the rest of his career. Because I mean, you could easily see him on Family Feud, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do get the sense, and I mean, if I'm wrong about this, I mean, I think it speaks to how good an actor he is, but I get the sense he actually genuinely enjoys sketch comedy. I wonder if that would be difficult for him to give up. I wonder if he just, like you kind of posited at the beginning, says like, hey, this has always been the destination. I just want to do sketch comedy with talented people on a big stage.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, I guess we'll see, post his SNL career, because I mean it can't go on forever. Anyways, but hopefully we join him in the group of people who have long careers. That's what we're aiming for here, not just with the podcast but with the game. So why don't we get back to talking about the game here? So let's see. Last week, as I said earlier, I believe, last week we covered our approach to teaching the game, and that came in, that was very much on our mind since we were about to teach a whole bunch of people at that Norman event. And then we also taught through like coming up against people breaking our game. And so far it's happened twice, but like as more people enter the game, they're going to be pushing on the walls, trying their best to wrangle the game into like how can I win even if it isn't fun? And we just always have to make sure we're coming in and being the opposite of the fun police, where we are actually the police who are making sure the fun is still in the game.
Yeah, let me sharpen that up real quick, because when you say, how can I win even if it's not fun? You're not suggesting that how can I win this game even though the game's not fun. It's how can I implement a strategy that is optimal for winning even if the strategy is not fun.
Correct. Yeah. That's something that I became like, I was already sort of aware of it, because I've even, I think we all take walks down like the road of like, one of our favorite games, Magic, one of our favorite formats, Commander. You can make that format very boring, very not fun to play, and win consistently if you want to. In fact, I tested X Seekers of Fortune out with a gentleman who has a lot of card game experiences. He was even an early beta tester for Hearthstone, and he said like he spent four grand on a Commander deck that won a lot and was not fun at all, and basically drove him out of the format.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like with Commander, there's a certain joy in building something that you think's gonna like get a reaction from people, and like like their jaw's gonna drop when you pull off the combo, or they see what you've put together. But when it works, and then you've beat someone, and then you beat them again, and then by the third time you're kind of like, I don't think I ever want to do this again. Like, let me go build another deck. Let me go figure out another strategy.
It's one thing for it to be like your magic trick, like surprise, like at the table. But by the time, like when you do that once and you get everybody, that's probably practically when you should retire it.
That being said, I think your rune deck looks like it's a lot of fun, because it's not really super combo-y. It's more of like, we're going to blink a bunch of stuff and do cool things, but not necessarily the same stuff every day, every game.
Yeah.
So,
I really do need to update that deck because I haven't touched it for probably like 5 years in terms of adding cards to it, maybe even longer. And a lot of Magic cards have come out in that time. So I really want to sit down with somebody who knows like the current, like what, like who's really versed in the past 5 or 6 years of Magic, and be like, okay, what cards have just been purely like upgraded, like what should I take, what should I take out, and put in. But it is that is actually a really fun deck to play. I do agree, because I would say one thing is it's unassuming. So if nothing else is going on at the table and you're not being very aggressive, you can just kind of like sit back and build up your forces and then surprise everybody all at once. And it definitely benefits playing politics.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But let's see. But this week and we'll talk about playing politics and escalating tensions and, surprising everybody at the end. We wanted to talk about the storytelling through gameplay, which is something that Danny and I are very passionate about. That's like something that we constantly come back to in terms of like when we're talking about gameplay, talking about mechanics, we're talking about often like the idea of like going on a quest, going on a hero's journey through gameplay. And we early on in the design of X Seekers of Fortune, but well before it was called X Seekers of Fortune, we thought how, I forgot exactly how it came across, but we thought, how do we add drama to the game? And the solution we came up with is this thing called the Final Quest. Danny, would you like to tell the audience about the Final Quest?
Sure. Yeah. So the Final Quest, I think this came from, one of the dynamics I think of our working relationship that has been very fruitful is, oftentimes one of us will kind of say, hey, I kind of want to address this element of the game. Like, hey, I want there to be another act to the game. I think is kind of where the final quest came from. But the point is basically one of us will say, hey, I think I want to add something in the game. I just don't know exactly what it is. And then the other one will sit on it and come back and pitch some ideas. And oftentimes we'll pitch something that fulfills sort of that, the first one of us's idea or desire for an addition to the game. So in this case, I think that you had identified that you felt like the game needed some sort of change up towards the end just to add some tension and drama and build. I think build was really important to you. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't know how to feel about that at first. Again, thinking to games like Magic, Magic has its ups and downs, but it's not like the game dramatically changes every single game to a specific, alternative phase of Magic. So it wasn't something that I had complete knowledge of or experience with, but what I ended up thinking was like, well, what if we differentiated the last adventure people complete from the rest by fashioning it somewhat like a boss fight, make things more difficult, limit options, and really ratchet up the pressure so that when people got that one, it really felt like they crossed a finish line.
So in case the audience doesn't know, let's just let them know what the final quest entails. So in the game X Seekers of Fortune, your goal is to complete 5 quests, or 5 adventures. Now, when you complete your 4th adventure, though, you have to go through this special, I call it a ritual. And what that involves is first you discard all the leads from your hand. So you can't, if you had stockpile leads and hoping that you could just, go from the 4th to the 5th, that's not going to happen. In fact, I think that's probably was the main reason we decided to do this, is because it seemed like a savvy player could just, pull, stockpile leads and just like blow through, possibly even 3 quests in a single turn and just, win the game. So you have to discard all your leads. Then you flip up one more adventure and put it into your adventure zone, and your rival then chooses which adventure you have to complete. Mm-hmm. So if you tried to curate it to where it's like, oh, I have a 4 and a 3 still remaining, and then you turn over a 5, your rival's probably going to choose that 5 to make it as hard as possible for you. So then you're left with one adventure, no leads in hand at that point. You draw your Action X card for like your regular reward. You draw 3 more leads to get you started. And the chances of you drawing into 3 leads to complete whatever adventure's in front of you, I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but I don't remember it happening.
It's happened. It happened to me, I think, this weekend.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, we can talk about that in our recap section. Mm-hmm. But it does. I mean, we've played at this point between Danny and I, we've played hundreds of games, and I haven't seen it happen. But so then you get your 3 leads, you have your adventure in front of you, and at that point, you don't get any more adventures. You just get to draw your leads per turn. Mm-hmm. And I would say a savvy player will probably have tried to hold on to some of their Action X cards for this portion of the game to utilize them to try to finish that final adventure as fast as possible. And it's as though you can, you're out there for one reason and one reason only, and you can see it glimmering on the horizon, and you're just trying to race towards it. And especially when both players get into the final quest, often it comes down to I draw. It's like I draw my lead, I didn't get there. You draw your lead, you didn't get there. And it's just like, it really makes the turns go fast. It really feels like the tension is there.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned kind of squirreling away as many Action X cards as possible going into the final. And I think it's kind of like you're preparing for that big shootout or showdown with your rival. And then, if your plan to foil your rival with the Action X cards you have falls through, then that's where you end up in the top decking foot race. And I'll tell you don't want to get into the top decking foot race before your opponent's in the final quest, because that's a recipe for disaster. They can really, really mess with you if you've got yourself all the way to shields down, because it's very hard to refill on resources once you're inside the final quest. You really are meant to win and not durdle there, you know.
Well, we could talk about a recent time that I got to the final quest and thought I was, setting sail for victory, only to be, literally thwarted and have the victory, taken away from me by you later. But I'll say it does this. It ensures that people can't just, oops, I win, which is something I really dislike in games. In fact, there's a game that I do kind of compare X Seekers of Fortune to, just to quickly communicate to potential, players, like what kind of experience they're going to have. And that game is Settlers of Catan, which I think is a good game. But one problem I've always had with it is it sometimes feels like there's like a lack of drama and tension going into like the final parts of the game. It's just like somebody goes from not having won to having won. At least that's my experiences with it. It might be different for others. Maybe if you get more savvy, you know what to look out for. Like, oh, he has 6 victory points. He's in the danger zone. But I wanted there to be something that's like you draw a line in the sand and it's like I am now crossing into winning. Like the red zone in football. And I just wanted there to be that drama that comes from announcing that you're entering the final stages of the game. Because like, in video games, they do it all the time. You'll have like, a very specific set piece before going into the final boss battle. One of the most iconic moments in a video game is in Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, after you've kind of gone through your dark, if I remember the pacing of the game correctly, after you've gone through your darkest hour, what's the hero's low point, you've been captured, you were tortured, your character literally has his eye shot out of his head, and he's now a one-eyed man with a eye patch on, and you're about to head out, like you've recouped yourself, you got your equipment back, and you're about to head out to the final the final moments of this adventure where you're going to face the boss, complete your mission, and escape. They have this. They just basically slow the game down where they have Solid Snake climb a ladder, and you get on, like, especially the first time you get on in this game, the first time you get on that ladder, you're just like, okay, I'm climbing up a ladder, and then like a minute. After like 45 seconds, you're like, what the hell? This ladder is taking forever. And then like 20 seconds later, they just bring in the theme song of the game, and it's like the somber version, not the, bombastic. It's like the version with like the acoustics, just sing, and they sing it. And we'd have to pull it up on YouTube now. My recollection is you're just sitting there pressing the up button, climbing this ladder for at least 3 minutes straight. And
really,
yes, but it really sets it lets you do what movies do. In a movie, you would have a moment where you'd have like maybe a montage. You'd sit with the characters as they like collect themselves. You just see them suit up and gear up to go out and fight the villain. This is the point of that story where you're taking it back to the antagonist. And I just knew, like, I don't want to say a lot of this. I often say that we sort of, rewrite the story after we've, made decisions, and then you rewrite the story in retrospect. But it did feel like when we were making this decision, it was like we don't want to just have people win out of nowhere. We want it to be fully announced. It's like I have my 4th quest done. I'm not going to be able to complete my 5th adventure this turn. Most likely, except for most likely you're not going to be able to. So let's mark it. Let's put a punctuation point on it, so that way everybody is aware that we are now in at the end. So it feels like a proper story. Every proper story announces its ending.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. Change matters. People don't want to just be stuck in the same spot. If you do the same thing over and over again, it gets stale really quickly. So by just adding this moment that the game dramatically changes, and also is something that, like you said, is forecasted. Everyone knows you have to go through this ritual, like you said, before they can enter into the end game. And it's not impossible to win from completing your 4th adventure and then immediately completing your 5th adventure. But generally speaking, it requires you having stockpiled some Action X cards and pulling off some sort of combo. One of the things I've always said is I wanted this game to have moments where you feel like you're storming off. I don't want it to be something you can do on command, but I do want it to be one of those things where it's like, oh, the cards came together in my hand. I think I can do something cool here. Let me do it. But ultimately, the final quest in the game really serves to kind of give people this dramatic tension where they're like, okay, I'm so close to winning. Like, you can measure how close you are to winning. You can measure how close your opponent is to winning. And the stakes feel much, much higher because once you're in the final quest, again, going back to this, it's not just like you can win here. If you don't win here at this moment, if you take your shot and you miss, you very well can lose here. And even though your opponent's behind you, they're going to be better prepared and they're going to beat you. So it's not just, hey, I got here first, so I'm going to win. It's, hey, I got here first, I better not mess up.
Yeah. I've definitely felt that because like things that you don't get, actually, you lose so many resources that you're kind of taking for granted. You're not going to get, most likely, you're not going to get another Action X card when you're in the final quest. You're not going to get more adventures. That cuts off like 2 or 3 of the heroic feats. If you get rid of your adventure, because some of the heroic feats cost an adventure to play, you can cash your adventure in, but that's the last adventure you get. So unless you have like some grand plan, all you're doing is making it to where you can't win the game, or at least not. You're going to take a long road to win the game if you haven't prepared for it. And it creates drama. And there's like some of the riskiest decisions I've made in the game have been because of the final quest and the limitations it puts on you. So
yeah, normally when I lose a match of X Seekers of Fortune and I look back at my gameplay, very rarely am I like, oh, I didn't do enough. Usually it's, hey, I overextended myself at this critical moment. I should have held on to something. And one of the things I really love about the game is the more you play it, the more you see resources that you weren't even aware of. Like, there's certain things in lines of play, as any good game should, reveal to you over time, that you're not going to see when you first start playing. And it's especially exciting as a game designer and creator of a game to be surprised by your game and to realize, oh, your game is deep enough that you don't actually understand how to play it optimally. And the more you play it, the more you learn about your own game. And that's one of the very cool things about being someone who loves games and then has the opportunity to make games is you really get to see sort of the underlying magic in games. There's something animating within the game. We've often talked about it as, we didn't create X Seekers of Fortune, we found it. And finding it, helping reveal it to the world. It's a very, like I said, it's a magical experience.
Oh yeah, for sure. And yeah, well, speaking of revealing it to the world, how about we get into the 405 Brewing event right after this? Welcome back to the official Mega Moth Studio Podcast. I'm here with Danny Ayub, my co-host. I'm Joel Watts, your primary host. And so we were just going to go ahead and jump into our recap of this past weekend. We were in Norman, Oklahoma, specifically to host an event at 405 Brewing. An event where we played a lot of X Seekers of Fortune and introduced it to a whole bunch of new people. Danny, what were your, how about you set the stage for us a little bit?
Okay. So we were in Norman, Oklahoma, which is a suburb of Oklahoma City. If you're familiar with OU, Oklahoma University, I guess it stands for, the Sooners.
Yeah.
Norman is their backyard. So it's very much a college town. Probably the highest concentration of dispensaries I've ever seen anywhere. Not an exaggeration.
I would say that it's definitely a boom town for medical marijuana right now.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's in the American Plains, so it's pretty flat, but it's a really cool town. It has a nice vibe. It's someplace I definitely hope to spend a lot of time in the future. Anyway, our good friends, Will and Annie. Annie is our head of community. She manages social media and outreach. And then William is the producer of the podcast and our head of media. He and she live in Norman, and so they also work at a brewery in Norman that makes fantastic beer called 405 Brewing. 405 Brewing. I don't know why I said 405 so weird. 405 Brewing.
It's late. This is the latest. This is the latest record we've ever done, and I think we both had full days up leading up into this.
But not the latest we'll ever do.
That's true.
So 405 Brewing was pretty awesome. So anyway, they agreed to host an event for us because they have a actually pretty robust game playing community, mostly tabletop game players. But they've got quite a few people over there who enjoy their games, and so they agreed to host us, and we set up an Eventbrite and put out some social media posts and posters in the community inviting people to come out, and we ended up having 33 people RSVP, and which was great turnout for us at this stage of the game. And honestly, the venue probably couldn't have supported much more than that, and the honestly, our ability to proctor games and really give people the attention they need as they're learning the game probably couldn't have supported much more than the turnout we got. So super successful.
I would say we got the experience points needed to level up to handle more, but yeah, we pushed the limit of our bandwidth on that day. Just like it was very much reminiscent of the Comic Palooza event, except for with Comic Palooza, we could rely on people finding something else to do. And like there at 405, we were the main event. We were pretty much they were there for beer or they were there for X Seekers of Fortune.
Often both.
Yeah, often both, because we did, if you don't recall, we did offer to buy people their first beer if they came out to demo the game, and we made good on that time and time again. Now, it was wonderful. I want to say the vibe out there is great. It is now officially, to me, it's the official Digger's Dugout for X Seekers of Fortune. Until further notice, that's going to be our Digger's Dugout. And so it had a great vibe. We had good music when we could play it. We had to turn off the music frequently, though, because we were also getting video footage for Kickstarter, for YouTube. So whenever the cameras were on, we had to turn off the music so we didn't get copyright strikes because of, YMCA playing in the background.
We dodged that bullet.
Which is a banger if you haven't heard that song in a while. I was like,
yeah, you were playing it one morning. I woke up and I'm like, is YMCA playing?
Yeah,
I haven't heard someone jam that ever. It's only ever been at like parties that were like elementary school dances that I can remember hearing.
And a certain president's rallies. He loves himself the Village People. But yeah, sometimes when you hear a song in a context, like it's like sort of like seeing a painting for the first time again. It's like you're just like in an interesting situation. A song comes out that you didn't expect to hear, and you're just like, oh yeah, this song is really good. So because my brother describes it as wallpaper. Some songs become wallpaper where you don't even pay attention to them. They're just ubiquitous. They're around. You haven't actually sat down and listened to the song. It's sort of just the idea of the song just hits your head. And I was, I guess, I was enough out of my comfort zone to where when I heard the song come on, I was actually like listening to it, like as though I hadn't heard it before. So it kind of like made me reappreciate it. But we're not a Village People recap podcast yet. We can see
never.
No, song by song, we're going to go through the entire Village People discography.
Who will be your guest host for that one?
I don't know. I'll come up with somebody. Maybe interested in joining me on that journey.
Maybe a driving crooner podcast.
Ooh, yeah. But it was great, though. We had like 5 setups, 5 decks and mats ready to go. And they were often full the entire time. I don't want to go through every single detail, but I think one of my biggest memories that I'm going to carry with me from this is the day before we went to a Thai restaurant where, wearing our shirts. So everybody was like, kind of like, we're willing to hear what we had to say, I think, because they were just interested in like, why are these 4 folks all wearing the same shirt at this, at this restaurant? And our waitress, her name was Madeline. And she was just, she was wonderful, great ball of energy, really wonderful vibes. And I got her talking about her experiences with playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I was just like, hey, if you like games, come out to 405 tomorrow. not only did they come out, or she came out with like 3 of her friends, and they came out early, which was actually a little to our disadvantage, because like everybody who signed up and RSVP'd basically RSVP'd for like the 12 o'clock hour. It was the busiest hour, so she came during the busiest time with her 3 or 4 friends, but just the fact that she came by, I shout out to Madeline.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you remember
the vibes are real?
Yeah, the vibes are real. And do you remember her the restaurant she works for?
Yeah, it's called Tai Tai, and it was really great. Their lunch special is ridiculous. Honestly, it's like the kind of thing that when you read it on the menu, you're like, you're going to have to explain this to me because there's no way this is real. You have like 4 options and you get all of them. Like there's 4 different choices you have to make, and you have like 3 options at each level. And they're not like, oh, would you like, I don't know, miso soup or, fill in the other, like, not that that's Thai, but it's like 4 different entrees. That's like, do you want massaman curry, or do you want green curry? Do you want pad thai, or do you want, fried rice? It was amazing. The food was excellent. And, but you have to fight for a table. They are mobbed because that lunch special is the business.
Mm-hmm. And that's not just the restaurant she works for as a waitress. That's her family's restaurant. So, definitely give them, there was Tai Tai.
It's Tai Tai.
Yeah. So big shout out to Tai Tai. If you're in Oklahoma, the city, anywhere in the city, just go and find Tai Tai and head out to it. I'm sure Madeline will, be a great waitress for you too. She was wonderful. And 2 of the gentlemen that she brought, I think she brought three guys with her. And like one gentleman bought like at least 6 packs from the brewery.
Oh, yeah.
I mean
Jordan, I think it was Jordan, her boyfriend.
Yeah, which was amazing. And then 2 of the gentlemen who they left without stuck around. Would you say 3 hours? They stayed and played X Seekers of Fortune over and over again for at least 3 hours.
I mean, I don't know because so much was going on, but I mean, they were definitely there 90 minutes or longer. I mean, it was enough time where it was remarkable, I would say. Like we were like, oh, sweet. And they were deep in the tank. They were like straight up playing. I would really like to spend some time picking their brain, which I have their emails. Maybe I'll reach out to them and see if they'd be willing to debrief with us, and maybe we can send a demo deck to them.
I think of all the folks that we've played with so far, they're the ones who I'd most be, getting those 2 guys to play, in their off time and, let us know what they think. I would really love to hear what they have to say. So a debriefing would be great. I mean, I would invite them on the show to get, to record their feedback. But yeah, no, that was like the highlight of my day. And then, I mean, it also was a great time for, Will and Annie have a huge family. They have a lot of kids together. And all the kids, I think almost all of their kids came out at some point and got to play the game too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the cool things, and one of the questions that we had as we were deciding how to position the game with the market. I mean, with people and players is, you never know exactly who the game will appeal to. You have your ideas, and I think for us, we assume that our audience would be primarily millennial and Gen X, and we felt like maybe Gen Z wouldn't be as interested because we weren't ready to launch mobile. We thought once we had the game mobile, we would get some more traction, but the Gen Z cohort that has played the game has responded extremely well, and shout out to all those guys, and won't use their names since they're under 18, but we really appreciate all of you guys, and thanks for also joining the Discord and participating in the Discord and helping us build that community, because that's a frontier for us right now, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that in a future episode. But overall, I would say that the 405 Brewing event was a really magical day, and one that I think will stay close to my heart as we go on this journey for many years to come. I don't know, it's very special just in these early days to share the game with new people and see them react to it, and just getting that kind of, pat on the back, hey, this is real. You did it. You made something that is bringing some amount of happiness and joy to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I will completely agree. I don't want to say shocked, it's not full blown shock, but I was definitely, it was a warm feeling in the heart, and especially, and, like we always like to go back to, if you are yourself a, up and coming game designer, I can't emphasize this enough. If you have to save up some money, and call in some favors, you do want to, once you have your game up and running and you're ready to show it off to people, please do something like this. Get, a space and get some time and invite as many people as you can to come out and play, because it's rejuvenating in these processes. You're going to find yourself bogged down with the business side of things often, or marketing, especially after the game is sort of complete and you don't really have to design it anymore, which is the funnest part of this process. You're going to run into a lot of things that you probably you didn't think you would have to do. And it's always good during that time to, have some time to just be like, this is about the game. Let's teach the game to as many people as we can. Let's show it off. Let's strut it out. If you have a good game, it's going to be very rewarding to get that kind of feedback from people. And it is part of the process. This is marketing that we did, essentially, and market research and getting the name out there. I feel like every time we do an event like this, it's sort of like saying, it's like we have a presence now. It's like people in Norman, Oklahoma will be talking about X Seekers of Fortune, their experience with it, and they'll be sharing that with their fellow game players around the community.
Yeah, absolutely. While we're on the topic of Norman, Oklahoma, just a quick shout out to Wizards Asylum, who hosted us in the afternoon for, just some casual play and TikToking fun at their store. Those guys are very, very welcoming, and I really appreciated them. Also, a shout out to Common Space, Game Cafe. We really appreciated our time with James and Kevin over there, and seeing their library of games. $5 to get access to that game library. It's well worth it. And Joel, I know you'll probably plug their Twilight Imperium community that they've got there on Saturdays.
Yeah, I would. I will say this: I might be planning a trip to Norman, Oklahoma sooner than Danny, because to be out there with the Sooners, because it turns out that it's a big hub for Twilight Imperium, which is a game that, since we've gotten into this game design space, which, I knew of games, I knew some of the popular ones, but I definitely have become more aware of some of the more niche, or Twilight Imperium feels like the Mount Everest of games. It's like it takes 8 hours to play or longer. So it's like all about space politics and space wars. So I'm like, oh, this sounds excellent, but I haven't heard of any place here in Austin where people play it on a regular basis. So I'm just like, when and where can I play it? And it turns out, I guess Norman, Oklahoma, has a lot of time on their hands to play 8-hour-long games. I heard them say sometimes they do rule modifications that push it to 15 hours to sit and play. And I was like, all right, I can make a day out of that. And I would say, audience, if we get popular enough, and if the Kickstarter does well enough, I might really push us to have a stretch goal that is Danny and Joel and the crew play Twilight Imperium on stream. So if you want to see something like that happen, us learn how to play the game and sit down for like 12 hours straight and play the game on some sort of stream marathon, subscribe-a-thon type of thing, stay tuned. We're let us know in the comments below. I'm going to really push that to be one of our stretch goals.
Yeah, I think if we do that, we're going to have to get those like mobile IV bag people to come and set us up with some IV bag.
I definitely want to discuss like the diet for the day. It's like we can't just treat it like a pizza day. We gotta probably get like veggies. Like actually have somebody come over and cook us some fresh good food. Otherwise, we're going to just regret our lives.
Yeah, as we play Twilight Imperium and eat food that has no nutritional value.
Yeah, exactly. So, But we'll, that'll be a ship. There. That's actually a series I would love to do with Danny. I think we've even talked about it a little bit, but we haven't said anything official. But I know the top two games for me to try out in that sort of way are Danny and I doing War of the Rings together, and our entire group doing Twilight Imperium together. Hopefully I think we will be able to build an audience who would be interested in that sort of thing.
I'm down. I'd like to do it before the end of the year. Let's go. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. Well, we are recording late. We are, and I think we've talked about the topics pretty well today. I'm sure we'll have memories of the Norman event for years to come. So don't be surprised if it comes up again and again in the podcast. And there's more definitely to get dig into on how to create drama in your games. And as we create our next game, this is always going to be something that I'm looking for whenever we sit down to create a game, is how do we make the end game matter? So because if there's one thing I dislike, it's just somebody winning out of nowhere. I like a victory to be forecasted.
Yeah, you don't want a movie that you're watching just to kind of end abruptly. Like, I mean, if you don't feel like you're building towards any sort of climax, then, I mean, that doesn't sound like a very satisfying experience. But on the topic of storytelling and drama in games, I think there's definitely a lot more for us to talk about. I think maybe we do an episode in the future that's purely about mechanics and dig into top down and down bottom up design. Because that's something that we've talked a lot about and something that we take a lot of pride in. And I think talking about the game, the mechanics, and how all that kind of plays into our filmmaking background and our approach to game design from a filmmaking perspective is something I'd like to share with the audience some more.
I think that could easily be our topic for next time if we wanted to make it so. So, yeah, we'll get more into that. And I do have a lot to say about top-down versus bottom-up design, because my opinion on that subject and what I thought was the right way of going changed immensely just through the course of making this game. So, yeah, well, I would love to get into that topic here in the next few episodes. But right now, we are thinking that our next episode is actually going to be about community building, sort of like talking more about like what we did. The steps we took at 405 were just the first steps. And when you're building a community, you have to capture people and sort of like usher them in to like, the places where they can go to find like-minded people who also want to play your game. So that's what we're focusing in on right now. We're going to be doing a lot of work in that in the next week, and we'll probably have a lot more to say about it next time. So as of right now, next time you can expect us to talk about, community building, all the tools that go into it and all the resources you might need to be looking into to make it happen, and what our approach has been so far.
Sounds like a good topic for us.
Okay, well, we're about to roll out of here, but as always, Danny, I believe you have gotten something random prepared for me. It might be extra random because I think you were still coming up with it right before we rolled episode. So that makes me a little nervous. I'm always a little nervous going into this segment. So what do you got for me this week?
So this week I have a request of you to do. We like to do the getting to know each other segments quite a bit, and so I would like to ask you to do a little ranking for us about your personal life.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Okay, so what would you say are your top 3 mistakes that you've made in your life?
Okay, I think like a lot of millennials who were on Reddit around 2012, I want to say it was. I might be wrong on the exact date. My biggest, I will say this: I am somebody who believes that fortunes fall frequently. So anything that I consider a mistake could also have been a great, it might have also been to my advantage not to go through or not to have to deal with. But I will say, number one, that's easiest, cleanest to say is, as a lot of people did, I saw the post on Reddit that announced Bitcoin to the world. Like when the people first came out of the woodworks and it's like, hey, the dark web's been operating with this for years and we think that it's going to go somewhere. and it's like $25 a coin right now. And seeing that and being like, that's interesting. I'll see how that develops. And of course, it's like it becomes $2.50 a coin, and you're just like, darn, I missed that. Well, I guess I know for next time. And then you see, you check out, and then like you check back in, and it's $5,000 a coin. And you're just like, well, I mean, you think at that point you'd say the sky's the limit, but no, you still think, oh wow, well, it can't go up much higher than that.
So missing the Bitcoin train in the early 2010s is mistake number one. Okay,
yeah,
I think I can see that.
Let's see. I mean, it is like one of those things we are talking. I'm debating how personal to get here. I think the Bitcoin one was the easy one because it's a mistake that a lot of people. I mean, I guess we could say the same thing about like I was also early on, well, relatively early to podcast. I became a fan of podcasting relatively early in the boom of podcast. Mm-hmm. And so I guess now that we've started this podcast, and granted, I don't know, like I think you've often said it's like you wanted to make a podcast for a long time, but you didn't have anything you felt particularly like the expert of your field in. And that's true, but there was a lot of low-hanging fruit at the early stages of podcasting. And a big one that I actually recorded a pilot episode of that I don't know if you heard about this or if I talked too much about it, but I did it with Toby probably in 2016 or so, like shortly around the time we were debuting Negotiations. Mm-hmm. No, so it must have been actually like 2013 or something. But we recorded a podcast. My idea was, this was, I would like to say, I don't know how many people were doing this at the time. This was fairly early, but I wanted to do a Lost recap show. And I was going to call it Lost in the Act, where the idea would have been to take the one episode and divide it in, one episode of Lost and divide it into the 5 acts and release an episode a day, Monday through Friday, covering each act of the episode.
Oh, wow.
I know. I don't know if that would have been like a ridiculous format. I'm sure we would have reacted to, criticism about it, but I did also think it would really let you drill into like all the Easter eggs of each individual that might have come up on each individual act of Lost, because one scene could feature a book that could be worth talking about for 20 minutes, in that show. And it still is one of my favorite TV shows. And I think it's like a TV show that I keep meaning to go back to and watch from the beginning to see how I feel about all the little details along the way that, how they could play into the ending of the show. And so, that was that not following through on that because there was a lot that I didn't follow through on in my 20s. And
the 20s are often about, figuring out what you like. And, if you're in your 20s right now and you're getting discouraged, particularly if you're in your later 20s and you're trying stuff and you are out there, shooting your shots, but it's not coming together, just know if you keep at it, sooner or later, things will start to come together more. I mean, I think both of us felt like we had to kind of walk away from certain things that we were actively pursuing to fill in some more life lessons and round ourselves out a little bit more. And then when we turned our attention back to it, all of a sudden things just seemed to click a lot more. At least that was my personal experience. I took sort of for the better part, probably like an 8-year hiatus from trying to produce creative projects at, a relatively large scale. And, when I came back to it, was certainly something that I felt like I was more capable of doing because of everything I had learned in my career in the intervening years. So
yeah, I think it's not everybody's equipped coming out of their sometimes their family life, sometimes coming out of school, whatever it is that you're coming out of. Sometimes you're just not equipped to deal with like all the little, things about your own personality that can get in your way. And, we thought to turn this into a therapy session, but there was definitely things I had to, work through, and I'm still working on. But, I did spend a better part of, I think, 4 years with a therapist, my former therapist, Steve Larson, who, rest in peace. The reason I'm no longer with him is actually because he passed away. But that made a huge difference in where I'm at now. Now the final request. Are you? I was wondering if you were laughing or crying.
No, I just. It was just so out of nowhere. Like, I mean, I know what's going on with Steve in all respect. I think he was, just from an audience perspective, I just don't feel like most people would be like ready for the.
I had not only do I have a therapist, but he's dead.
Yeah, I had a therapist. He's dead.
Well, I'll say this. I had a therapist who died because I had a therapist who was definitely past the retirement age. And you know what? You start getting people at a discount at that age.
Right. It wasn't like it was tragic. It was forecasted, right? Like he was
an
up
old,
there.
but through my time with him, he went from being like living independently. He was going through a cancer scare, but he got through that. And then, he had a fall, and then he was in a retirement home. And the last few times I saw him, he was in that retirement home. And then, like long story short, it's like he spent like 2 weeks, like rescheduling me or postponing our session. And then I stopped hearing from him, and I reached out to him a few times. I didn't hear from him. And so then I went to the retirement home, like, a few weeks after that, and they were like, "Oh yeah, Steve passed." And I did get to go to his funeral. Fortunately, I'm very grateful.
I'm glad that you did. I know that I remember when it happened, you were really concerned about it. I mean, I think you mentioned that you've kind of felt like there was a lack of closure there, because I remember before Steve passed, we talked about it, and I think you felt like, maybe it was time to find a different therapist. And I think you had maybe some questions about whether or not, he was still capable of kind of progressing you, or, if he was, maybe having, some difficulty keeping track of the plot at that point. But
even in the early days, he would, there was quite a few times where it's like, I'm like telling him my family traumas and my family history, and I'm just like, do I need to be going over this again? Shouldn't you write this down somewhere so you can refer to it? So
yeah, I mean, he sounds like he was a really awesome guy, but just stepping outside of the individual person, I mean, just the whole scenario is pretty.
I think my next therapist, I'm going to have like a maybe 15 to 20 year gap, or not in therapy, but like they can be 15 to 20 years older than me. But after that point, I'm probably going to be like, okay, I want somebody who's a little closer to my generation at this point.
Do you feel like you could go see a therapist that was younger than you?
Maybe. That's actually a really good question.
Yeah, I know. It's weird, right? Like,
you kind of are looking for like a paternal figure kind of thing with therapy. I think it's like the kind of the secret to therapy is you're looking to replace your parents with more educated parents.
Depending on your trauma, I guess.
Yeah, depending on your trauma. Well, trust me, mine is definitely in that terrain. I think like in a few years I could. Like if I was 40, I think I'd accept a therapist who was like in their early 30s.
Can you tell the Steve Smoothie story?
This might have been what killed him, man. Well, yeah, no. It's funny though. Well, I mean, it's like Steve like at the retirement home, Steve was insisting on making me a smoothie, and I was not hungry at all, and so I reluctantly, took it when he made it. I was like, I told him, no, I don't want a smoothie, and he made one anyways and handed it to me. And I drank it. It's like it's obligatory after that point, right? It's like,
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Steve, I'll have your smoothie. I didn't think much of it, but then the next day he was like, sent me a text message. And it's like, hey Joel, if that smoothie was not, if you're feeling a little bad today, if that smoothie had expired milk, the milk was expired. Which was
I just
actually
love that that's the text you get from your therapist.
I would sometimes tell other people stories about Steve, like things Steve would say during therapy, and they're like, should your therapist be saying that to you?
Like what?
Like
he would say that.
Okay, like I think it was like he would share a lot more of his personal stories. Like let's face it, at a certain point it was like less about therapy and more about friendship. But he would he would tell me stories about his life, and and I guess that's uncommon for therapists to do. And one of his big stories was like he actually has a memory, like one of his first memories is being a little boy, and he was old. He was a little boy during World War II, and at some point he was like at an Air Force base. His dad was in the military, and he was at an Air Force base when soldiers arrived back home from deployment. I don't know, like, he doesn't know all the details. I don't know all the details. I'm not sure if they were coming back from, like the front lines of Europe after winning the war. I don't know if this was like them getting relief or whatever, getting R&R. But he was like, a little boy, and like these soldiers were passing him, and they were like, even the ones, the thing he mentioned was like that they stunk, and they looked like just depleted. And then like they noticed him, and from what he says, they saw this little boy on the side, and they all started going over to him because it's like, I guess like it's hope right there. And like they picked him up and like, hoisted him because they were all excited to see it, just a child, after all what they had seen. And I thought that was a beautiful story. But then I told people I worked with that my therapist told me the story. They were like, "Why did your therapist tell you that?" And I'm like, isn't that what therapists do? Don't they share things with you? But I don't think it's conventional. He was also a therapist from the I guess like more of the religious side of therapy, if you will, like somebody who was probably I think he was a minister at one point, so I'm sure his approach was probably a lot different than a more secular therapist. And like I said, I got a guy at a deep discount for therapy, so I'll take everything value.
Yeah, if you had paid full price, you probably would have got a smoothie that didn't have expired milk in it.
And I paid him for that session. Like that, I think that was like, and that was one of the last times I saw him. Like maybe the second to last time. But the thing that I remember is like I gave him money to sit with him and try, and I ended up teaching him how to use his phone better. And then he gave me an expired smoothie.
Are you 100% sure that Steve didn't think you were his therapist?
Not at that point. That might have been. At that point the roles might have switched. I was hoping he thought. I hope he thought I was his friend, and that I think he hopefully realized that I was coming over not just to, talk in a therapy session, but just to catch up and spend time with a friend. So.
Yeah, I really admire how you handled that situation. I thought that you. I think you recognized at some point that this was someone who probably wanted your company as much as, the professional relationship. And I think a lot of people would have cut and run a lot earlier because it is a ridiculous situation. But it's sweet that you stuck with it.
Actually, I would love to implore our producer and editor, William Wymore, if you want to just record yourself weighing in on this and just insert it right here, I will go out of my way to listen to this episode when it comes out so I can hear your thoughts on it. As for the third regret in life, that's a big one. This is a weird one to say, I think. And it is a little bit because I'm avoiding some more like, traumatic or personal regrets.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure like, if we were off mic, I would have like 3 different answers for you. But I think how long it took me to embrace the idea of, taking on healthy amounts of debt and and through credit. It's like I went a long time without having a car in Austin, Texas. And I don't know how people perceive Austin, Texas, who might be watching this who have never been, but Austin, Texas is not a great public transportation city. Even if you think it might be from the outside looking in, it has a bus system, but it's not a very efficient bus system. It ends very early. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a car. I was, there was many things I missed out on throughout my 20s because I was carless. I mean, like, I think there's probably plenty of times that you invited me out to do something and I was like, I can't. Either you have to pick me up or I have to get a bus and then you have to bring me home, because if I stay out, I'm not, the buses are going to stop running and I'm going to need a ride home. And it's just, I think it created a situation where I was much more of a homebody than I probably should have been during those like very active years. And it actually took, I don't want to speak too ill of her, but let's just say a girlfriend who I don't have fond memories of she pushed me to get a car. And it was like one of those things where she was like, oh, we'll just go out and look, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, you should get this, and and she nudged me in the right ways to pull the trigger on it, and it wasn't, I mean, it taught me that I could do it, and I've now paid that car off, and I'm looking forward to buying my next car. But little things like that, like it's like as long as you do it responsibly, it's a good thing to utilize credit and utilize loans. So I think my parents made me very gun shy and worried about that sort of thing early, or throughout my early years of life, for good reason. They were very bad with credit, and but I was able to like slowly take it on, and I think I could have taken on more earlier and probably had access to a reasonable car and getting around town, which would have been probably a little bit better for my early career development if I could have been mobile.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's good that you have a healthy respect for it. I mean, I think a lot of times in life, whether we miss the shot ourselves or somebody else misses it and we see them miss it, our tendency is to overcorrect. So, if you shoot short of the hoop, you'll shoot over the backboard. If you shot over the backboard, you'll probably, oftentimes our first attempt to kind of correct behavior goes too far the other direction. So, I mean, I think it's good that you have the respect that you do, as you are now kind of nudging more into that sort of middle area where you understand the advantages while also being super cognizant of the risks.
Yeah. Thank you. And that is true. I think, if your parents make a mistake and it's like really scars them or really hurts them, they're going to overcorrect that for you or like demonize it for you. So, it's something to be careful about, but it's also like, hey, I mean, well, I don't want to get too fatalistic about it, but or too irresponsible, but you can't take the money with you. So, definitely utilize those resources while you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, well, that was 3, Danny. Did you have anything else you wanted to add on to that? Or do you have things that you think I should regret that you remember from our time in Austin together?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you regret this or not, but one of my all-time favorite memories of you is when it was the first year we met. So it would have been 2004. And I remember walking up to you and you were in a parking lot and you were smoking a cigarette. And I was like, hey, bro, I didn't know you smoked. You're like, hey, don't worry about it. They're not addictive. And you showed me a package of American Spirits and pointed to the words no additives.
It was Winston's.
They were Winston's?
They were Winston's, I'm pretty sure.
I think at that time you were on American Spirits.
That might
switch to Winston's.
Maybe. That might be true. I remember. Oh, my God. Yeah, that is.
I just love it because I feel like you were genuinely starting to smoke in what you felt like was a responsible manner. You're like, well, these ones aren't addictive. So this is a way to be cool without the risk. And then it's like, oh, shit.
No, yes. And they are addictive, and it's very. It's one thing to quit for a short period of time, but it's another thing never to touch one again. And I'd like to get to that point at some point in the near future. But yeah,
if I could accomplish that with psychedelics.
Well, we can talk more about that some other time for sure. I think you are correct, though. It can help. What also helps is like being in a situation where you can't smoke. I almost got on I almost stayed on the wagon after my time in the hospital when I was in the hospital for 11, 12 days. You can't really smoke while you're in the hospital, especially when you're in a lot of pain, and getting up and walking is already hard enough. You're not going to be going outside and you're thinking about a lot of other stuff. Once I got out of the hospital, I think I stayed off cigarettes for like 3 weeks, and it was like I was going good, and then I just had a moment of weakness and found myself, searching them out again.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't, no, but you're not wrong. If you're fun, it's funny that you bring up the regrets. I didn't mention that one, but yeah, if I could, I don't know. Well, that's actually something I don't know. It's like, what would your life be like if you didn't smoke cigarettes? Because that one has a lot of social implications. So I'm not saying it's a good thing. Granted, do not smoke. If you're not smoking, there's no reason for you to smoke. I would say, though, that that is like a butterfly effect type of change in somebody's life to change that one.
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, I don't think it's necessary to condone smoking to acknowledge that to have not smoked in a life that where you were a smoker would have radically changed your life, not just in terms of the health implications, but more so just in terms of all the interactions that seeking out cigarettes or sharing a cigarette with someone else, may have led to, pushing you on a certain trajectory. I mean, that's the whole idea of the butterfly effect. It doesn't take much in order for things to be dramatically different.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I do feel like I owe you an opportunity to ask me a hard-hitting question since I put you on the spot here. So I don't know if you have one or if you're going to holster it for another day, but I'll tell you.
I think I'm gonna holster it because I think we started this late and it's starting to get it's not getting any earlier in the evening. So I'll hold on to that, Jenny. You're definitely going to get hit hard sometime in the next few weeks with a question.
Sure.
Thank you so much for listening to the official Mega Moth Studios podcast. Our theme music is by James Hilden. We're produced and edited by William Wymore. Our social media are at TikTok, we are Mega Moth Studios, all one word. On Instagram, we are X_seekers_of_fortune. And on Facebook, we're just X Seekers of Fortune. You can play the beta version of our game, X Seekers of Fortune, for free on tabletopia.com. And if you are a Discord user, you can find a rival to play with at Discord. Our channel is what, X Seekers of Fortune?
Yeah. The best way to get it, though, is there's a link in our link tree, which is accessible either through the TikTok or the Instagram. So if you follow us on TikTok or Instagram and then click on the link tree, which is in the bio there, you'll see a link that will allow you to join the server.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, if you can go to that link tree or go to our website. In fact, recently we discovered that if you just Google X Seekers of Fortune on Google, you will be in the top 3 results. I think our website is result number 1, and Tabletopia and Facebook are results 2 and 3.
I can't promise you can get a Discord link off the website yet. I need to look into that because I think I ran into some sort of thing, but you can definitely get it through Instagram and TikTok.
Okay. Well, I'm really looking forward to that. We're just tightening it up week in, week out. Danny's doing a great job tightening up the website and the link trees and getting all those things leading to the same place. And I think we're going to see a lot more developments there in the next week or two. So just be on the lookout. And if you need any updates, just put your email address in at our website and we'll make sure to let you know when new things are happening.
The one other thing I'd add here, because I don't see in the show notes, is starting on July 11th and every Tuesday thereafter, we will be hosting Tuesday Night X on our Discord server. Every week you'll be able to hang out with us from from 8 p.m. to midnight Central Standard Time. And we are going to just be answering questions. We'll be doing some streaming. There'll be an opportunity for you to find people to play with because it'll sort of be the one time a week where everyone gets together and you can reliably meet other members of the community that you might be able to meet up with at different times during the week. So definitely encourage you to come out. We will have some featured matches, and if you come out and participate and play and we get to know you, you may find yourself on a featured match one day in the future. So yeah, please join us. Again, you can find the link to Discord to join us for Tuesday Night X either through our TikTok or Instagram link tree.
And yeah, you'll definitely be seeing more about Tuesday Night X on any of those social media platforms. We're going to be pushing that pretty hard here in the next few weeks. So, be one of the first ones. Come out early, and, you might actually be able to find one of those elements of the game that might be slightly broken. And, at this point, anybody who breaks the game that we have to fix it, we're going to put you in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. And you might end up, I don't know, you might end up on a card one day.
Yeah. So come on out, come play the game, come enjoy the game, come break the game. But with that, Danny, I think it's been a pretty damn good episode. So let's go ahead and sign off. I've been Joel Watts.
And I'm Danny.
You're Danny. Yes, sir, you are. And we'll see you next time, Fortune Seekers.
See you guys next time. Do we need to do like a postscript about thing?